entrenched himself as the main guy in that backfield, and it's nice to see, given where he was a couple of years ago.
Well, the NFL is all about opportunity, isn't it?
No, you can't disagree. I mean,
right?
look at Matt Schaub. He may not play, next week or start another game for the rest of the season, but he impressed in the one game he did have. Matt Ryan's going to come back, but I think by the time that Matt Ryan's back week 10, they may have a new head coach over there in Atlanta, because I remember the reports I mentioned to you earlier that Deion Sanders did know that he does think that they may fire Dan Quinn during that week 9 bye, so we'll see what happens.
Well, usually when a coach gets fired, it's usually during the bye, because then you have at least 2 weeks to try to get some sort of
build a mojo with the new coach. No,
right. If it's going to happen, it'll be then. Otherwise, Arthur Blank might decide, heck with it, I'll just go ahead and finish it out. It's too hard to tell, depending on the nature of the owner, too.
And this is the last point I'll make before we speak to Anthony is, I get the Kenyon Drake trade from one perspective for the Dolphins, given that they're just trying to accumulate draft picks as a way of kind of building that team for the future. I guess they think that this model doesn't work, so may as well scrap it and start over. But again, we said this before, and I've said it ad nauseum. If we do draft a quarterback, who's he going to throw to next season, or have somebody to help supplement with in the backfield? Given that you just traded one of your best offensive weapons in Drake. I like it on the half of Arizona. Now they have him, and if Chase Edmonds plays well, that's a nice duo given the injuries that they have. But overall, I hate it from Miami's perspective. And last night was just another example of how poor they are, especially in big moments in the fourth quarter. It was not fun to watch. Pittsburgh run down the field and score that 9-yard rushing touchdown that pretty much sealed the loss for Miami.
Yeah, I agree with you. It definitely is one of those situations where the Dolphins went ahead and, had a 14-0 lead. They teased everybody, but in the end, they got closer to where they wanted to be. But now the question is, and I brought this up last night with Xavier when we did our football show, where will Tua wind up, in Cincinnati or Miami?
I know. I saw they are starting the rookie. I believe. Dalton was benched today, and you know what? You can't really blame them. They've been horrible. I believe they're, 0-7, 0-8. So, yeah, it's time for a change there. He's been there for over a decade. He took them all those playoff games. They didn't win any of them, but I think it's time for a new voice at the quarterback position. I'm sure you agree with me too.
So what's the best job in the league if you're a player?
It's a quarterback. Hold the clipboard and make a couple of mil, right?
That's it. That's what we're with the backup quarterback.
But again, they're not going to be scared to revert to Dalton, say, next week if their rookie struggles, and I'm blanking on his name right now. But I believe it's Griffin. I'm not 100% sure on the name, but I genuinely do think that they're not going to have a long extended leash on the rookie moving forward.
And right now, the best job I still think in football is a backup quarterback.
Yeah, I believe his name was. I believe there was a Jay Locker, I believe, quarterback who played for Tennessee, held a clipboard for 4 years, and he retired. Walked away from $4 million. So it's not a bad job to have.
Yeah, right.
Teddy Bridgewater's not complaining, though. I'm sure he wants to play right now.
He walks away with a 5-0 record, and the guy is going to go out there and be a starting quarterback for somebody next year.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about how impressive Breeze was in his first game back.
Well, we will, but we'll see whether we're able to do it. Breeze looked pretty good.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns in that first game back
when he's in there. But Teddy Bridgewater did a really good job. Keep holding down the fort when everybody counted the Saints for dead, and all of a sudden they're very much in the thick of the playoff race for sure.
I could see a fit in Tampa. I know we're not really talking about that yet, given that the season's only about 50% of the way through. But they don't. I think they've had enough of Jameis Winston over there.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's time for a change. And Teddy Bridgewater, with the way that he's played this year, I think he's earned himself a multi-year deal, maybe even a 3-year deal with another team out there. Maybe even Tennessee goes after him. But at the same time, you just got to keep Drew Brees in there. And who knows how long he has left. Maybe Bridgewater wants to take a 2-year deal with New Orleans, and then Brees walks away and they go to him. But, I'm sure they won't do that.
Yeah, I personally don't see it, but I personally don't see it myself. But we'll find out how that plays out. One guy that's probably more qualified to answer that and a whole lot more is Anthony Wood. And Anthony, welcome to the Sports Exchange. Glad to have you back with us. Scott and Lewis here in the house.
Absolutely. How are you doing, gentlemen?
What's going on?
Doing great. So, anyways, Lewis has a quick question, then we'll go to your notes. I'll go ahead and let you talk about the Drew Brees situation since you're hot on the trail with it, and then we'll go to what you have.
Yeah, so Anthony, I'm sure you saw the Saints game. You know, Brees came back. He looked as good as ever. The hand seems to be okay. What do you see Bridgewater's options are moving forward, given that he's going to enter free agency as an unrestricted free agent? I believe his deal was only a 1-year contract. Could you see a scenario, because we know Brees is, I believe he's 40 years old now, could you see a scenario where they bring Bridgewater back and say a 2 or 3 year deal, and then once Brees walks away, they have a successor already lined up?
I've seen 2 scenarios suggested so far, and one of them involves, first of all, as you mentioned, him staying around for a longer period of time as the eventual successor to Brees. Now, whether or not that happens, I think it's anybody's guess. It really depends on how long Brees intends to play at this point in time. The QBs, as we know, are able to play probably into the mid-40s as long as they can stay healthy at this point in time. But it depends on his priorities. I mean, what does he plan to accomplish over the next couple of years of his career? Or does he head off elsewhere? Now, the only team I've seen which I think is a possibility is possibly the Patriots. I mean, they don't necessarily have a plan for who's going to take over for Brady at this point in time that we know of. Brady has been very hesitant to talk about anything beyond this year. He's actually set to become a free agent for the very first time in his career at the end of this season. And he hasn't. He's been very hesitant to talk about what's going to happen next. So I've seen it suggest that perhaps he ends up at the Patriots as Brady's replacement, and as unexpected as I suppose that sounds, I think it would fit. It would make sense. So I think he will end up at one of those 2 teams. I can't necessarily see him going elsewhere. I read that he actually turned down a higher offer earlier this year to be the starter for the Dolphins before they got in Rosen. So it's clear he wanted to be where he was and he wanted to win. So I can't see him going to the Dolphins after this year. I mean, we know they're going to draft someone at this point in time. So in terms of other teams, those are the only ones that really jump out as possibilities. Do we perhaps look at someone like the Panthers or the Titans? But I can't personally see that happening. So yeah, for me, it's one of those 2 teams.
Now, one more brief, on the Patriots thing before we get into your topics. We understand that everybody on the offensive side that Belichick brings on, they tend to just fall in line with the system that he runs. And, you can suspect whether he's calling those plays on offense and defense or not. But how do you think Bridgewater and Belichick would adjust, given that Bridgewater's style of play is a lot different than Brady's? Brady, as we know, is very kind of like drop back and throw, dink and doink, whereas Bridgewater likes to scramble a little bit.
He does, but it's certainly noticeable that over the last few games in particular, and since his knee injury in general, he scrambles a little bit less. Yes, he still uses his legs very well, but he's not quite the sort almost, I guess, Deshaun Watson-esque QB that he was. He tends to sit in the pocket just a bit more now, and I think he would fit quite well. And I'm sure Belichick knows they're going to have to adjust their system at some point, if only slightly. I mean, Brady's not exactly the fastest QB, but he can still move a bit when needs to. And I mean, we've seen that on a couple of occasions this season, actually, surprisingly. But I think he'd fit quite well, to be honest, because I think they need to adjust their system slightly as the years go on. In terms of adjusting to the times, we know that dual threat QBs are the way this league is going at this point in time, and I think he would fit quite well. But I think he's a better pocket passer than perhaps we give him credit for, and I think he'd fit well in the system. And let's be honest, he is one of those sort of consummate professionals. He's focused. He would fit in well with Belichick in that regard, and I think it would be a good fit for the team.
Okay, let's go over some of your notes. Okay, go through them. He had a lot of question marks. We'll put some periods in them instead. How's that sound?
Absolutely, yes. Let's be honest. We were expecting trade deadline day. We were expecting it to go absolutely crazy today. It didn't quite go as planned. The only trades we saw today, we saw Keith Talib head the Dolphins. Now, Keith Talib is actually on IR, so this is an interesting situation. It doesn't look like he will actually be playing for the Dolphins at all. His contract runs out at the end of this year. It was essentially a salary dump by the Rams, who are looking to extend Jalen Ramsey's contract. Now, essentially what they've done is they've sent Talib and a 5th-round pick to Miami in exchange for a 7th-round pick in a couple of years' time. What Miami have essentially done here is they've taken on the rest of, I think it's $4 million contract for the rest of this season. They'll have him on IR who knows what's going to happen with him at this point in time, but it's essentially them buying a 5th-round pick. And they've been saying for a while now, and it's been well publicized, that the Dolphins were keen to picks and then buy teams out of contracts if they were to get picks out of it. So it's worked out well for both sides there. Who knows what's going to happen to Talib at this point in time? He's 33 years old. We don't know where he's going to go next, if he will actually ever play for the Dolphins. No, I don't think it's it's impossible if they do decide to extend it. But personally, I think it's highly, highly unlikely. They're obviously looking to rebuild with youth, so I can't see how a 30-plus-year-old DB is really going to be the starting block for that. So I think it's safe to say they bought themselves an extra pick there. And then in terms of other news today, we expected to see possibly Le'Veon Bell move. That didn't happen. Robbie Anderson, another guy from the Jets, didn't end up happening. There were heavy talks between the Cowboys and the Jets for Jamal Adams. That very nearly came off, but they couldn't agree on terms. In terms of the Jets wanted more picks, the Cowboys weren't willing to part with them in the end. I think it was either 2 firsts and a second, or a first and 2 seconds, but they just couldn't agree on terms in that regard. So that did not end up happening. So it's been a relatively quiet day in terms of trades. I mean, the only other news we've got this week is obviously Leonard Williams went to the Giants from the Jets. Not overly surprising. It's for a third this year and a fifth in 21. It's the first trade between these two teams. It's not necessarily surprising that he left. He hasn't necessarily played up to the expectation level that we had all thought he would coming out of the draft, but it's a good deal for the Giants. It bulks them up on that defensive line a little bit, and it gets someone with a heavy salary cap off that Jet roster. So perhaps a slightly fresh start will do him good. And in terms of Trent Williams as well, over the Redskins, we'd expected to see him move today. It hasn't happened. He has reported, and he will be reporting to the Redskins, so we may well see him this season for the Redskins, which is certainly something we didn't expect. Other trades that did happen during this week in general: Kenyon Drake, running back for the Dolphins. They obviously continued their purge by dropping him for a sixth that could become a fifth-round pick to the Cardinals. Cardinals obviously in need with heavy injuries in that backfield. They were desperately in need of another running back. They tried out the likes of J.J. Obviously decided to go against him. One of the surprise news headlines of the day in terms of moves was Matt Bryan. 11 years in Atlanta. He's been cut by the Falcons, who have brought in Younghoe Koo instead, which is a slightly surprising move. I mean, Bryan's been an absolute stalwart in that locker room, so it's strange to see him leave. But yes, in terms of other completed deals, Michael Bennett has gone to Dallas for a seventh that could become a sixth. It was interesting, obviously, Bennett has remained in the locker room for the anthem of late, and apparently Jason Garrett has spoken to him, and I think they're under the impression he will be out on the field with the players, so let's see how that ends up going down. In terms of other completed trades, Browns have traded for defensive end Gennard Avery to the Eagles for a fourth-round pick in 2021. Darius Slade didn't end up going anywhere. Chris Harris didn't end up going anywhere. So it was a strange day in that it was surprisingly quiet. I think we were all expecting, again, the names I've already mentioned, and the likes of possibly Tyler Eifert as well, to all be AJ Green to be leaving today, but none of that ended up happening. It was a slightly disappointing day in that regard.
AJ Green didn't go anywhere. AJ Green did not go anywhere. Andy Dalton was benched on his birthday for rookie Ryan.
And I must admit, I feel slightly bad for Dalton, because he's, I think, third or fourth in the NFL in terms of passing yards. Is he an elite QB? No. Is he a top 10 QB? No. But he's had a lot of yards, and he had a good game against the Rams overall. I mean, you got to feel slightly bad for him, especially because I think it was on his 32nd birthday. I mean, it's not exactly great timing. But the impression we get is that they see Ryan Finley as the future, perhaps, and they want to give him reps. They know they're not going to get much out of this season. The best they could get is perhaps finding their future QB.
Well, I'll give you one word that describes that. He's a scapegoat. I think I'll go somewhere else, go over a few other things that I'm going to go over with you. Okay, Joe Flacco's out 5 to 6 weeks. So.
Exactly, yes, Joe. I mean, that's a nasty situation with the Broncos being, but at the same time, it kind of works in their favor after he heavily criticized them after their loss, saying that they were afraid to go for it, and he criticized the decision-making in terms of offense. And that was... Can't have gone down well with Vic Fangio there, so it's not surprising. It kind of works in their favour. I think he would have been dropped either way after making those comments. But yes, he's out for 5-6 weeks with an injury now. Don't know who's going to be backing up. It could be Brett Rippey, it could be Drew Lock. So that's a bit of a fluid situation at the point in time. Again, the Broncos aren't necessarily going anywhere at this point in time. It's a bit of a disappointing season from their point of view as well. So. It's been a strange couple of days, to put it lightly, in terms of moves around the NFL.
All right, we got about 6 minutes to go. Let's talk about Wizenhut. Then you're going to wrap it up with Belichick, and I'm going to do something which I don't do very often. I'm going to give the microphone. I'm going to give it to you to make sure we get through to these quickly. And then if we have a moment for a comment, we will. Go ahead.
Yes, the LA Chargers have fired offensive coordinator Ken Wisenhunt. The very experienced coach, has been relieved of his duties after 3 years with the Chargers, and now the Chargers, Anthony Lynn, has said this is not an easy decision and definitely not one that I take lightly. You win as a team and you lose as a team. It's never about just one person. At the end of the day, however, I simply felt a change was needed at this time.